Good afternoon, viewers. Today we have my long-time friend from 2009 when we first met in Mongolia. And since then we have been friends for a long time and had to do a lot of different projects together and work in Mongolia as well as in US together. And Douglas Veihland, he is currently working for the Ascent Learning as an Executive Director of Certification. And today we invited him to tell us about his personal experience going through and planning for retirement and what advice he would give to our viewers personally. And here is Doug. So, what would you suggest to our viewers in terms of how they should start planning for their retirement?
My first advice is what they've probably heard from others, and that early is better than later. But most important thing that I wanted to say up front was that if your employer offers a match for any contributions that you would make to a retirement plan, take it and try to take it to its full maximum. For instance, an employer may match up to the first 6% of whatever contributions you give. If you make 6%, they will match that 6%, and therefore you're essentially doubling your money on your retirement activities and investments that you're making. Now they may say that you can contribute up to 10%, and please, if you can, make up to 10%, but always try to make sure that you're hitting the maximum that the employer will match, because that's just like free money. And if you don't take it, you've left it on the table of your employer, and it's not going to be there for you.
How old were you when you started investing for your retirement?
It was my first job that I had. I was working for an employer that offered a pension plan, but as most pension plans, you had to work at the company for a long time before you would ever be vested in the pension. And I think most of those pensions have now sort of faded away. But I remember the year that they first started offering the individual retirement account. And at that time, the maximum contribution was $2,000. And I remember it was probably at my second or third year out of college that I went ahead and made the $2,000 contribution to that IRA. And I have to think, who knows, I can't really say, but I know the size of my wealth now, and I would imagine that that $2,000 has now grown to over $20,000 that I now have available, because it's been able to accrue the value and interest and investment earnings over time.
So it's safe to say that you started investing when you were around 20 years old?
Yes, exactly.
A lot of people say that, it used to be that retiring with $1 million sounded reasonable, but now recently on the news they're saying that retirement with up to $5 million is feasible if you want to retire comfortably. So what are your thoughts on this? How much money is enough once you retire to be comfortably continue your lifestyle?
I think it depends on your lifestyle. For a lot of people, their idea of retirement is that they're going to travel and see the world and take cruises. Obviously, they have to be more committed to a larger retirement account than others do, who may just be satisfied with smaller travel plans, and even the whole question of retirement. I mean, when do you actually retire? That's sort of a moving target these days.
Mm-hmm. So what retirement mechanisms are there, except that the one you use, except whatever your company matches?
Yes. Well, the one, like I said, is the company match, and that's typically into something like a 401k account, mm-hmm. is what that would normally be. There's also other kinds of 401b accounts, for instance. I know that works with nonprofit organizations. Mm-hmm. So those are essentially plans that you own and you control, and you make the investment even though you can get advice. For those that don't have an employer, the other opportunity is the individual retirement account. My son is in California. He's sort of self-employed, so he makes a contribution every year to his IRA account, and that becomes therefore a deduction on his taxes. He doesn't have to pay taxes on those at this time in his life. He would only have to pay taxes upon them whenever he retires and is taking money out of the IRA at that point in time. So those are the two that I'm most familiar with.
Individual retirement account you mentioned, even if you don't have an employer to match up to your retirement investment you're making, you're saying anyone can start with an individual retirement account and start putting money towards the IRA accounts.
Correct.
What is the difference between putting it in your IRA and just putting it into a little bit high yield savings accounts?
The difference is that whenever you go to do your income taxes, it will ask you if you've made a contribution to your IRA. And if you say yes, then you would essentially be taking money and investing in your retirement on a pre-tax basis. So in other words, you're taking money that you would normally be paying taxes on, and instead you're deferring the taxes and so forth. If you are doing a simplified savings account, then what you're essentially doing is you're paying for you're essentially paying taxes, and then after you pay the taxes, you use what's left. So there's a tax advantage to do in an IRA. And in addition, typically because an IRA can be invested for a longer term, you can essentially be more aggressive with regard to maybe the money that you make. Of course, all this assumes that you're going to make your income's going to be less in retirement and not more in retirement. If you might find yourself in a situation that, if you're already in a low income tax bracket, and the savings may not be as dramatic as if you're in a high income tax bracket. The IRA has greater benefits the more money you make, because the greater is the tax deferment that you're making at that point in time until later.
Oh, okay. So if you make a lot of money today, you can deduct your IRA account contributions, and especially your suggestion is that if you're making more money in higher tax brackets, for example, independent contractors, freelancers who make a lot of money now rather than when they get retired, it comes in handy.
It's going to be there for you. Exactly.
So besides traditional, the 401k and IRA, what other financial savings advice would you give to our viewers for them that will help them to plan for their retirement?
Well, sticking on the retirement theme a little bit, what I followed a pattern was, and my wife totally agreed with it, was that when we were young, we were far more aggressive with our investments. We were more likely to invest into stocks and even things like precious metals like gold and silver. And we happened to catch some of those investments at a very good time in terms of their rise and so forth, and that helped out a lot. As we grew older, and even now, we're less aggressive. We're more likely to have a portfolio that's got a mixture of stocks and bonds rather than one that might be. For instance, if you look at the Vanguard, they have something called the Target Retirement Funds, and a Target Retirement, let's say 2030, might have 75% stocks and 25% bonds. I'm just making this up. I'm just for comparison purposes. Where a stock portfolio that might be Target Retirement 2020 might be reversed. They would have 75% bonds and 25% stocks. So that way, if you go through something like a downturn, which we just experienced earlier this year with the huge drop in the market, you don't have as much invested in stocks, you're going to be less vulnerable, and so forth. Now, the return investment isn't as great on a year to year, but at some point in time in your life, you have to decide that you need to be able to avoid the volatility and stick with things that will assure that the money is there when you retire, especially the closer to retirement that you get.
So
on some other things, I don't know, and again, it's all about savings, which may not be what everyone wants to hear, but I've always been good to take care of the HSA, the Health Savings Account. And Health Savings Account is something that you can make is tax deductible contribution. You could make the investment into your HSA, you deduct that from your taxes, and then that money is available for eligible expenses, related almost exclusively to medical expenses. But the nice thing is that you don't have to pay taxes whenever you spend money out of your health savings account. Unlike the RA, where you'll have to pay taxes because that's deferred income. With the health savings account, you can just expend money that you already have. So again, rather than, for instance, I pay my Medicare premiums out of my HSA account. And so therefore, I'm using the money that was before taxes to spend, where if I didn't have an HSA, I would be spending money that's after taxes. And so therefore, it wouldn't be as advantageous. Another instrument similar is what is called the Flexible Spending Account, FSA. And those are instruments that you can use, purchase different kinds of prescriptions and medical services, and even some things from pharmacy locations and durable medical equipment, other stuff like that. And again, you can use that for your flexible spending account to make those kind of purchases.
So what happens to HSA and FSA if you don't use it for medical purposes and you just want to take out the money?
With the FSA, eventually you would lose it. It's use it or lose it. But you're only doing so much per year. You're saying I'm going to spend. You're saying I'm going to have $1,100 withheld from my payroll check to put in my FSA. So then you have until essentially that calendar year plus until March of the next year, and that's what I'm recalling. That may have changed since the last time I was using that. As a Medicare recipient, I don't get to have the HSA and FSA advantages. So I don't know that it's all current, but essentially, so it's use it or lose it. But you can do stuff like, if you have some money left over, you may see the promotions from the eyeglass people that comes out every January and February. If you've got money in your FSA, come and get new eyeglasses. Now with the HSA, that's different. That becomes part of your estate, and if you don't use it, then it becomes part of your estate and is passed on to whoever you've designated as your beneficiary for all of your other funds.
Okay, so you can't use it for any non-medical expenses, but you can pass it along to people that you designate them to.
Correct.
Okay.
And even things like Medicare premiums for my Part B, I'm able to use my HSA for right now.
So you're suggesting our viewers that take advantage of the pre-tax offerings as much as possible, put aside money for future use, whether it's the retirement, medical, or prescriptions.
Yes.
So you don't have to pay later in taxes,
Correct.
high in taxes.
Yes.
What other personal advice would you give for people to kind of encourage them to start investing and saving a lot more money?
I think that it's, I would encourage you to do it, if nothing, but make sure that you're using the proper vehicles. I don't know that going out and buying a CD is the best investment for persons to make at any point in time, unless they really want a no risk. I know that for our purposes, my wife and I, we each have our IRAs, but then in addition, we have a separate account that we have with Vanguard, I must say. And for that, we have an advisor, and we pay a small advisory fee, and it's relatively small. And that person makes sure that we're properly, that person takes a look at how much income we're making now, how much net worth we have, how much we hope to have for retirement, and then designs a plan that's somewhere on the scale of aggressive to very passive, and works with us closely on that. So I would say, and don't necessarily, if you feel comfortable buying individual stocks, buy individual stocks. But right now, all of our portfolio is in what is called funds. It might be an international global fund, it might be a healthcare fund, it might be an energy fund. It's some kind of fund that doesn't risk, you're not at risk with one stock that would go bad, let's say that you had, but rather it's the risk is spread out.
Yeah, especially during this time when the stock market is, ups and downs.
Sure.
And the crude oil and
Yes.
airline sectors
Yes.
have been hampered. So being the investment in a fund is more diversified portfolio, and then considering also the age,
Yes.
you will be more conservative investor rather than someone who's in their 20s going all in
That's
for
right.
the growth stocks, or I would say tech stocks. You know?
That's right, exactly. Yes. I guess one other thing, I started off talking about how take advantage of an employer match. And even now, I have a part-time job, and I've already retired from full-time work. But even now, my employer is offering a match, and I'm thinking I got enough, I do feel like I have enough retirement funds, but I'm not going to go against what I just told you. So I'm still making a contribution to my retirement fund. It's a 401k at my employer, and they are matching the money that I put in every year. So yes, so it's something I started early on, and every time I've always been good about making sure that even now I'm following my own advice, even though I'm technically retired and only working part-time.
So your own advice is do not leave free money on the table.
Don't leave the free money on the table.
Yeah.
If your employer wants to give it to you, take it.
Okay, great advice. And there are not a lot of people who wants to give us free money. So
That's right.
Why not take the ones that are offering us?
That's exactly right.
So thank you, Doug, for accepting our invitation and being here today with us, giving your valuable insight and advice into the path of retirement and how to plan and what we need to be aware of. We value all your hard work and commitment you have put through all your work, lifetime, preparing for your retirement and paying attention to the planning and retirement process, so you can give us, our young viewers, how to prepare for the future. And thank you again, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thank you.